All right, those who are going to watch this, thank you for joining me today. Today I have with me Mr. Stone. He teaches at the Raymond Elementary School. He is going on his 7th year of teaching. He is going to go back to teaching kindergarten where he started teaching. So, to start, Mr. Stone, what kind of technology have you used in your classroom experience with students or with other teachers?
We've used, in terms of devices, we've used iPads, we have used laptops, little MacBook Airs, and we've also used these giant, what they call smart tables. Giant tables are about a 42-inch screen facing up with wheels, and that was more useful for the younger kids, kindergarten, some of grade 1.
Cool. I've never heard of those smart tables. That's interesting. What kind of, for your grade 5 experience, what kind of experience was it with the kids? Like, how did you go about introducing technology with them or appropriate use in the classroom of technology?
Right off the bat, the very first day that we would use technology, we didn't do a whole lot of internet web browsing. We established rules, and we would establish them very clearly what was expected of them to do, and I would help the kids get established some favorite websites that we would use often, like Google Classroom or Symbaloo. We use those quite a bit, and when we'd go over rules, I would tell them my expectations. I'm a pretty relaxed teacher in general, but when it comes to technology, I view it as a privilege, and my rule with them generally with that was a one and done. So if you mess up once or you're doing something that you're not supposed to, you were done for the day. So lots of regimented rules and very firm rules that the kids would help me create. Sometimes they're a little bit rough, and so I would try to lead the discussion and lead them to proper consequences instead of being banned for life, like some of the kids wanted. So those are some things that we did, and we would revisit the rules as we needed, especially after a long break like spring break or Christmas break. We would revisit the rules, maybe not for an entire day, but we'd go over some expectations for about 20 minutes of the class, just to refresh everyone, get everyone back on the same page.
Yeah. So with the Google Classroom, did the students like using Google Classroom, or did they not? From my experience, we had kids that didn't like the Google Classroom. Did you have that in your classroom?
In grade 5, it was still pretty novel. I know some kids were introduced to it in grade 4, just depending on their teacher. And I think it depends on how well a teacher would use Google Classroom and the resources there. I wasn't super familiar with it, and nor did I take the time to become very familiar with it. But I would often post announcements to the classroom and say, I've uploaded a video on YouTube for this concept for science, whatever we were studying. Or I would post a quiz that I had made up that I wanted them to take, and then they could use it as a resource, this quiz to study for a test later on. I would sometimes use it to post assignments, not often. It was mostly used as a resource to say, here kids, here's some resources that you can use for this project. Every now and again I would create assignments, but the kids I found often would ask for paper instead of checking boxes or filling in the blanks with technology. Even with an iPad, they found using their fingers on an iPad was too illegible, and they found it inconvenient, and it was difficult to erase something. They had to select the eraser tool and then go back, whereas they found it a little more intuitive to just use a pencil and eraser with paper.
That's interesting to me, knowing that they come from, or most of them probably come from homes where they have technology, but they didn't like to use it in the classroom.
Not often, especially later on in the year. I tried to give them more assignments, and some kid would say, can I just print this? I would say, okay, sure.
Were there any kind of challenges that you faced with technology?
What kind of challenges?
Kids getting distracted, it becoming more of a nuisance in the classroom versus a tool.
Sometimes it's really easy to create bookmarks, and kids some of the kids who understood how to use hotkeys could alt tab out of websites that they knew I wouldn't appreciate them being on, and they would do that sometimes, and I would unfortunately have to just catch them doing a bad thing. I hate doing that, but if I can catch them, it just gives me ammo for my consequence. Other things that kids like to do, they like to listen to music, and I found that unless they had a pre-generated playlist ready beforehand, either at home or before the class started, unless they had that, searching for a song became very time consuming and cumbersome for the kid. And then as soon as that 3.5 minute song was over, they'd spend another 5 minutes looking for another song that they wanted. Also, sometimes the lyrics were inappropriate, and I would say, no, we're not listening to that artist.
Yeah. So is there any advice you could give an up-and-coming teacher about how to integrate technology into their classroom?
Yeah, having clear and established rules, try to get some, and having buy-in from the kids. Try to gain some resources by talking to other teachers, and have a direction and a clear path as to what you want the kids to learn, and then finding appropriate websites and resources to find that. So it's using websites and resources to fit what you want them to learn, as opposed to finding a website and forcing it to fit what you want to learn, because then you really miss the point of why you were even using that resource in the first place. And I fell into that trap quite a bit, and I still do every now and again, thinking that this was good, and then after the class is over, I'd be like, you know what, that was a waste of an hour today. That was not useful for my time or the kids.
Yeah. Great. So going into kindergarten again, what kind of tools do you think you will use, if any?
I know we do have access to iPads, and we're going to try to buy some licenses for some apps. I haven't done a ton of research over this, but in kindergarten, a lot of the things that kids need to learn would be phonetic awareness and learning how to decode words. So, for example, that the letter F says. So having apps that would help kids and give them further exposure to different letter sounds and letter names. Hopefully in an engaging and a fun way, and even competitive way. Some kids do thrive on the competition and being able to verse each other. Sometimes that can be useful. I do know that we also invested at the end of this past year in June. We bought a bunch of coding robots, and we're going to try to do some logical training or logistical training with the kids. And I'm not quite sure how we'll fit it into the curriculum, but I'm sure there's a way we'll find something to make it work. We're excited to use that and explore it this year.
Yeah, I think kids will enjoy that. They enjoy the hands-on stuff. I know for my own kids, they really have enjoyed the time they get to do just their little kid games on their iPads. We've got a letter game for our kids, and they like to trace the letters and then match the letters to the fruit that they start with or whatever.
There you go.
I do believe technology is kind of important for these kids, because we come from a world of technology. So I appreciate your insights, and I appreciate you letting me interview you for this assignment, and giving me some guidelines for how I can integrate technology into my class.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.